A billionaire ignores his pregnant wife's calls. She's in surgery fighting for her life, and he collapses in regret. Adrian Hale had everything. Unthinkable wealth, a hillside estate gazing over the Atlantic, and a name that commanded silent awe in the uppermost circles of global influence. But behind the facade of glamorous galas and limited-edition supercars, fractures began to form. His pregnant wife, Liana, pleaded for a moment of his attention. Just one call, a few words to comfort her at her most fragile moment. Adrian, however, was engrossed in sealing multi-billion-dollar ventures and networking with the world's elite, rejecting every call she made. He didn't know that Liana was on the brink of the most harrowing fight of her life. And soon, he would be forced to face the weight of shattering remorse. Adrian Hale wasn't born into affluence. He fought his way up with raw talent, iron resolve, and a streak of fearless ambition. At a young age, he was already gaining notoriety as a sharp-minded tech innovator, having founded a niche software company that quickly caught the attention of major investors like Benchmark Capital and Lightseed. Some years later, he had exited with an 8-figure deal. It wasn't long before headlines began calling him the next Elon Musk. Though Adrian always rejected comparisons, he wasn't interested in walking in anyone's shadow. From that moment, success poured in like confetti. His stock soared. Strategic alliances sprang up from every continent. Within a few years, he joined elite philanthropic circuits, exchanging ideas with leaders like Melinda Gates at global health summits and forming ties with Oscar-winning celebrities. But beneath every handshaking photo op and dazzling interview, Adrian carried memories of coding in a dim Brooklyn apartment, living on microwave noodles, working straight through the night. Those memories fueled his grit in boardroom battles and his unrelenting refusal to ever live in scarcity again. The estate he now called home stood high atop a coastal ridge in Newport, a breathtaking architectural statement in glass and steel. Its expansive windows revealed uninterrupted views of ocean and skyline, a rooftop helipad, a mirrored pool, and gardens that rolled toward the sea announced to the world that Adrian Hale had, without question, arrived. The tabloids called it the Hale Fortress, but Adrian shared it with someone far more important than any of that: his wife, Liana. Liana Rowan Hale came from a working-class family. She was warm-hearted, generous, and fiercely dedicated to helping those in need. Their love story read like a modern-day fairy tale. Adrian had noticed her at a grassroots fundraiser in Charleston, a modest event supporting a children's outreach clinic. While most eyes stayed fixed on the VIPs and clinking champagne flutes, Adrian's gaze landed on a quiet corner where Liana knelt beside a small boy in a wheelchair. She was gently encouraging him about his upcoming operation, her soft voice soothing his anxiety. Her kindness, Adrian realized, was both humbling and magnetic. He approached her unusually nervous, a stark contrast to his boardroom confidence, and they discovered a mutual passion for impact-driven philanthropy. Not long after, they were married on a private beach in the Virgin Islands, waves brushing the sand beneath a painted sky. The society pages splashed their wedding photos, showing a radiant couple who seemed to have it all. For a time, they truly did. He approached her, introduced himself shyly, an unusual moment for a man who typically closed multi-million-dollar contracts without flinching, and discovered they both had a deep-rooted passion for humanitarian work. Not long after, they exchanged vows on a secluded beach in Turks and Caicos, with the waves lapping gently at the shore beneath a spectacular golden sunset. The photos graced the pages of glossy lifestyle magazines, capturing a glowing couple who seemed to personify hope and happiness. At first, their marriage felt like a dream. They traveled together for both work and leisure: Paris, Seoul, Cape Town. Always taking time to immerse themselves in the local culture. Where Adrian's business instincts shined, Liana's compassion and openness won hearts. She became a vocal supporter of maternal health initiatives and started advocating for healthcare reform in underserved regions, leveraging her platform as Mrs. Hale to drive meaningful change. But as the years progressed, Adrian's ventures expanded. The deals became larger, the stakes higher, and the nights longer. Late hours at his downtown headquarters began to replace quiet dinners at home, and the steady hum of back-to-back phone calls began intruding on their once sacred time together. He was no longer the hopeful young founder full of lofty ideals. He had evolved into a formidable figure in the global market, his life dominated by corporate boards, international acquisitions, and high-stakes negotiations. Every minute offline felt like a liability to him, a chance for a competitor to move faster, push further. Liana sensed the change. At first, she would remind him gently that time together mattered. "We still have us. Don't lose that," she would whisper whenever she found him pacing late at night, glued to a conference call with partners in Hong Kong. He'd kiss her forehead and promise just a few more minutes before disappearing into his study for the rest of the night. When Liana found out she was pregnant, her entire being lit up with uncontainable joy. She looked forward to filling their grand estate with warmth and laughter. She imagined a softly decorated nursery, a wooden rocker by the window, and nights filled with lullabies and whispered bedtime tales. She pictured Adrian powering down his phone in the evenings so they could marvel together at the miracle of creating a life. But the timing of her pregnancy collided with a volatile financial landscape that demanded Adrian's undivided focus. Global markets were swinging unpredictably. Investor confidence was shaky, and supply chains were crumbling under pressure. Each day felt like a crisis to manage, a storm to outrun. Instead of stepping back, Adrian pushed harder. He told Liana, "This is all for the baby. I want our child to have everything, the best life possible. Just a little longer and things will settle down." And she believed him. He had never failed her before. Still, a quiet part of her wondered. Had Adrian become addicted to the game itself? It wasn't just the money anymore. It was the thrill of the negotiation, the surge of power in the boardroom, the intoxicating control of shaping futures. The power he held in the boardroom, the ability to make or break entire corporations with a single decision, was intoxicating. It was risky and exhilarating. As Liana's pregnancy progressed, she tried to remain engaged in her charitable initiatives, but her body began urging her to slow down. Small health flags started to appear. Brief moments of faintness, sudden dizziness, and her obstetrician, Dr. Eliza Chan, advised her firmly to minimize stress. What she needed more than anything was Adrian's presence. But more often than not, when she called him, the line went unanswered. Often at night, she'd wake up to find the space beside her in bed still empty. The house staff would offer her chamomile tea or warm compresses, doing their best to comfort her. But it wasn't what she needed. She needed Adrian's embrace, his voice, his reassurance. She needed to feel like she wasn't carrying this transformation alone. Still, she held on to the hope that once their child was born, he would see. He would cradle their newborn in his arms and realized that no deal, no acquisition could ever compare. She clung to that belief with every gentle kick inside her, whispering promises to the life growing within her. But fate, unbeknownst to them both, had its own plan. The signs of serious pregnancy complications were already present, subtle but ominous, quietly gathering strength, waiting for one misstep to tip everything into chaos. To outsiders, Liana's pregnancy appeared smooth and radiant. Her face glowed, her smile was serene, and her tailored maternity gowns flattered her growing figure. She continued making appearances at benefit events, though less frequently, and she sat for interviews promoting maternal health care, advocating for policy shifts to protect mothers and children. But beneath that poised exterior, Her body was trying to speak. She noticed herself getting winded from simple tasks. Standing too long blurred her vision. Walking up the grand staircase left her heart pounding so loudly it echoed in her ears, and sometimes, in the quiet of the night, she felt a tightness in her chest, an unsettling weight she couldn't quite name. Each time she brushed it off. This must be typical pregnancy discomfort, she reasoned. Dr. Chan had once said that no two pregnancies were the same. Each came with its quirks. So Liana convinced herself. This was all normal. It was all part of the journey, she told herself. Her checkups with Dr. Eliza Chan initially seemed routine. A leading obstetrician at the prestigious Marlowe Medical Center in Boston, Dr. Chan had handled countless high-profile pregnancies. She scheduled regular appointments, always ending each session with a gentle reminder. If anything feels unusual, Liana, don't hesitate to call. Liana listened. But a part of her didn't want to be that overly anxious first-time mom who ran to the doctor with every minor ache. Dr. Chan, I've just been feeling more tired than I expected, she admitted quietly one afternoon as she sat in the softly lit consultation room. The walls were lined with framed photos of smiling couples holding newborns, testaments to Dr. Chan's reputation. That's not unusual, Dr. Chan replied kindly. But your blood pressure has been trending a bit higher than I'd like. I want to keep an eye on that. High blood pressure? Liana echoed, startled. She'd always been healthy. It may not be serious, but we do watch for signs of preeclampsia in pregnancies like yours. We'll run some labs, check your protein levels. No need to panic, but definitely take it easy. Try to rest, and if anything changes, headaches, dizziness, vision disturbances, you come straight in. All right. Liana nodded, promising she would. As she walked out of the clinic, a subtle chill crept into her chest, a sense of vulnerability she wasn't used to. She wrapped her arms around herself as if to shield the tiny life growing inside her from the invisible unknown. For the first time, pregnancy no longer felt purely magical. It carried the weight of responsibility, uncertainty, and the terrifying truth that something might go wrong. That evening, she tried calling Adrian to share the update from Dr. Chan. He was in Manhattan at the time, closing a massive deal with a luxury international resort chain. Her call went to voicemail. She left a calm, composed message. Hi, love. Dr. Chan says we need to monitor my blood pressure. Nothing alarming, just being cautious about possible preeclampsia. Call me when you get a chance. I'd really like to talk. I miss you. Later that night, under the soft amber light of the bedside lamp, she kept checking her phone. Each time, the blank screen greeted her, and her heart quietly deflated. A mix of emotions churned inside her. Worry over her health, a yearning for connection, and a nagging frustration she tried to suppress. The silence felt louder with each minute. She placed a hand on her belly, whispering softly as if to the baby. We're okay, right? He's just busy. He always calls eventually. But the longer the quiet stretched, the more alone she felt, caught between rational reassurance and a creeping ache of abandonment. Was it really too much to expect a call back from her husband when there might be a complication with their child? Sometime later, Adrian returned to Boston, immediately immersed in high-level meetings at Hale International's headquarters, a gleaming skyscraper in the financial district, complete with biometric security and a full executive suite occupying the top floor. That afternoon, on a spontaneous whim, Liana decided to surprise him. She brought a homemade lunch, carefully packed with help from their housekeeper, her mother's old recipe for grilled vegetable sandwiches. Her driver assisted her inside, carrying the woven basket as she stepped through the polished glass doors of Hale Tower. The lobby of Hale International felt like a portal to another reality. Polished stone floors, towering glass walls, modern art sculptures, and a team of sharply dressed staff in dark suits. Every time Liana visited, she couldn't help but feel slightly out of place. Technically, she was the wife of the man who owned it all. Yet, the atmosphere always carried a hint of tension. People watched her with a blend of respect and curiosity. She'd grown accustomed to the glances, the whispered exchanges, and the occasional paparazzi snapping pictures outside the building. Inside the executive elevator, she tapped her foot nervously. She hoped Adrian would appreciate the gesture. Maybe they could finally sit down together, enjoy a simple lunch, talk about baby names, maybe even plan a brief getaway before her due date. It wasn't just about the meal. It was about reclaiming a moment of connection, however fleeting, amidst the widening gap between them. When the elevator door slid open, she stepped onto the penthouse floor, where a sleek reception desk stood guard outside Adrian's private suite. "Mrs. Hale," said the receptionist. A young woman named Amara, rising quickly from behind the desk. "I wasn't expecting you today. Let me just check if Mr. Hale—" Before she could finish, Adrian's executive assistant, Julian, appeared from behind the glass doors. His face was perfectly composed, every bit the image of corporate courtesy. "Liana," he greeted her smoothly. What a lovely surprise. She returned to smile, though something in his tone made her feel more like a disruption than a welcome guest. "I brought Adrian some lunch. Is he available?" she asked gently. Julian glanced at the screen on his tablet and hesitated. "He's currently on a critical call with an international investment board. It's been on the calendar for a while. I'm afraid I can't say when he'll be free." Liana's shoulders lowered slightly. She didn't want to impose, but a ripple of frustration stirred inside her. The warmth of anticipation she had carried now curdled into uncertainty. The basket in her hands, once a token of care, suddenly felt fragile. An offering from someone outside his orbit. "Would you mind letting him know I'm here?" "I don't mind waiting," she offered softly. "Of course," Julian replied with a nod. "Please make yourself comfortable in the lounge. I'll inform him right away." The waiting area was immaculate. White leather seating, modern abstract art, and tall bamboo plants lining the walls. Liana sat down, drawing a slow breath. Her heart fluttered unsteadily, the anxiety beneath her calm exterior rising quietly. She glanced at the polished marble floor, her reflection looking back at her, blurred like her place in Adrian's world. After several long minutes, Adrian appeared. He was speaking quickly into his earpiece, not even glancing her way. "Yes, I hear you," he said, striding across the room. He raised a finger toward her briefly, signaling he needed another moment, and kept walking. "No, we're not increasing the offer. This is our final proposal. They can accept or walk. I'll have Julian send over the revisions." At last, he tapped the side of the device, muting the call. "Liana, is something wrong?" he asked, his voice edged with impatience rather than concern. She stood, forcing a smile. "I just came by to surprise you with lunch." She lifted the basket slightly. "It's your favorite grilled vegetable sandwich, remember?" she said gently. Adrian's eyes flicked down to it, then back to the screen of his phone. "I'm sorry, Liana. I can't stop right now. We're about to finalize a major agreement in Singapore. The timing's sensitive." Her lips quivered. "I know you're busy, but Adrian, I left you messages. I'm worried. Dr. Chan says I need to take this seriously. My blood pressure is still elevated." He cut her off with a brisk nod. "Yes, I got your voicemail. Are you okay right now?" She blinked, caught off guard. I guess so. Physically at this moment, yes, but this is ongoing, and I really need—" For a brief second, Adrian hesitated. Seeing her standing there, basket in hand, eyes filled with concern, stirred something inside him. Guilt, perhaps, or shame. She looked so out of place in this world of sharp suits and power negotiations. A flicker of vulnerability passed through him. Not because she was here, but because he knew he had chosen to ignore her voice too many times. His phone buzzed again. He checked it, then looked back at her. "We'll talk later, I promise. I just can't break away now. Thanks for the lunch. Sorry I can't eat it with you." He gave her a quick, distracted smile. "Let's do dinner, all right." As he turned away, a deeper emotion tugged at him, one he couldn't name. It wasn't indifference. If anything, it was fear. Fear that letting go of this moment might cost him something too big to fix later. But his instincts, the ones honed in boardrooms, not nurseries, shouted louder. Without waiting for a response, he tapped his earpiece, rejoined the call, and walked away, leaving her there, clutching the basket, eyes stinging with unshed tears. She stood motionless in the pristine lounge, overwhelmed by the quiet pain of feeling unnecessary in her husband's world. That evening, he came home earlier than usual. Liana was curled up on the living room couch, flipping through a magazine without interest. He sat beside her, kissed her cheek, and offered an apology. But his phone kept vibrating, screen lighting up with alerts and messages, each one pulling his attention away. Liana didn't argue. She was too emotionally and physically tired to fight. So she stayed silent, letting him believe his presence alone made a difference, even if his thoughts were elsewhere. Still, a quiet dread was growing inside her. Her body was sending signals, subtle but persistent, urging her to listen. She could feel something was wrong. And she clung to the hope that Adrian's promise to talk later would eventually shift into something real, something supportive. Time was slipping away. She was well into her pregnancy. 1,000 fears haunted her thoughts, but none of them could compete with the reality that Adrian's world spun faster every day, while their child's heartbeat beat softly in the background, unnoticed. What they didn't know was that every missed call, every dismissed worry was building towards something much darker. Each silence was a brick in the path to disaster. In the following weeks, Adrian's life only accelerated. Hale International was entering a period of rapid expansion, launching luxury hotels, upscale commercial properties, and a groundbreaking series of wellness retreats that promised to redefine holistic travel. Across continents, executives whispered his name with admiration. He was hailed as a visionary who could spot a trend before it even existed and turn it into gold. He flew from Boston to Dubai for a prestigious real estate summit, then to London for high-stakes negotiations, and made a quick stop in Hong Kong to sign a multi-million-dollar deal for health-focused resorts. With each headline, he became more myth than man, an untouchable billionaire with a golden instinct. Lifestyle magazines lined up for exclusive interviews, hailing him as the Renaissance entrepreneur of his generation. Amidst the chaos of global meetings and red-eye flights, Liana's calls and texts began to feel like inconvenient disruptions in Adrian's tightly scheduled days. He still loved her. He told himself that often, but hearing her voice on the line reminded him of things he didn't feel equipped to face. He convinced himself she was exaggerating. After all, Dr. Chan hadn't said anything that sounded truly alarming. So each time Liana's name lit up on his screen, he mentally promised himself to return the call. But there was always another meeting, another negotiation, another fire to put out. Back in Boston, Liana was far from okay. Her symptoms intensified. What started as dull headaches soon escalated into piercing migraines. Her feet swelled so badly it hurt to walk, and even climbing a single set of stairs left her lightheaded and on the brink of fainting. Her visits to Dr. Chan became more frequent. At one appointment, the doctor looked visibly concerned. "I strongly recommend hospital observation." "Just to be cautious," Dr. Chan urged. Her tone was firm, her expression lined with worry. "Preeclampsia isn't something we take lightly, Liana. We need to keep you and the baby stable." Liana couldn't bear the thought of being confined to a hospital room, especially not without Adrian nearby. So she bargained for a middle ground, strict bed rest at home with a private nurse checking in daily to monitor her vitals. Dr. Chan agreed, but only on one non-negotiable term. If anything worsens, you come in immediately, no hesitation. The days that followed were long and lonely. Bed rest turned Liana's world into a quiet cocoon. She passed the time, flipping through baby name books, visualizing the life she so desperately wanted to share with Adrian. But each silence from him widened the chasm. It wasn't just his absence. It was the absence of reassurance, of partnership, of feeling seen. Every echo of her own voice in the house reminded her that she was bearing this weight alone. To distract herself, she read parenting blogs, crocheted tiny baby blankets, and reorganized the nursery over and over. But the stillness only magnified her sense of absence. Social media didn't help. Pictures of glowing mothers, happy families, and newborns filled her screen, tightening the knot of anxiety in her chest until it felt hard to breathe. One night, feeling particularly anxious, she tried calling Adrian again. He was in Singapore at the time, caught intense renegotiations with a global hospitality partner. Her call rang until voicemail picked up. She told herself not to cry, but the tears came anyway, silent and slow. Was she asking too much? Was she being unreasonable, selfish? A quiet guilt gnawed at her. She wanted him beside her, not for luxuries or comfort, but for presence, for shared fear, shared hope. But every unanswered call whispered the same cruel refrain. Not now. Not yet. Each voicemail she left carried the same painful contradiction, guilt for interrupting him in desperation for connection. Her mother, Eleanor Rowan, visited every day, once calm and measured. Eleanor now wore a constant look of concern. She brought homemade soups and warm blankets, sitting by Liana's side as they chatted about baby names and painted mental pictures of a joyful future. "Your father and I are here always," Eleanor whispered one afternoon, brushing a strand of hair from Liana's face. "No matter what happens." But Liana still felt the void left by her husband's absence. She longed for him to walk through the door, hold her, and simply say, "We're going to be okay." One night, Liana was startled awake by a sudden cramp slicing through her abdomen. A jolt of pain made her gasp aloud. As it eased, her heartbeat thundered in her chest. She grabbed her phone. It was the middle of the night. Her breathing was shallow, her hand instinctively moving to cradle her belly. "It's okay, little one," she whispered softly. "We're okay. We have to be." But her voice trembled even as she spoke the words. It felt like she was trying to convince herself more than the child inside her. A low hum of dread pulsed beneath her ribs. Something wasn't right. She thought about calling Adrian, but paused. He was probably in a boardroom somewhere across the world or fast asleep with his phone on silent. Even imagining his phone ringing unanswered left her feeling smaller, invisible in a world where deals came first. Instead, she rang the on-call private nurse. The nurse arrived quickly, ran a full assessment, and found her blood pressure dangerously elevated. She urged Liana to go to the hospital. But after an hour of rest and hydration, the pain subsided, and Liana, drained and frightened, insisted it must have been a false alarm. Eventually, she drifted back into uneasy sleep, silent tears dampening her pillow. She clutched a throw pillow to her chest, not for warmth, but for comfort. Something. Anything to fill the absence beside her. A few days later, Adrian finally returned to Boston. It was well past midnight when he stepped into the house, hoping to slip into bed unnoticed. But to his surprise, he found Liana awake in the living room, wearing a robe. Her hair was tousled, her eyes puffy. Relief and anger warred on her face. She rose slowly, one hand cradling her belly. "You're home," she whispered, her voice trembling. He exhaled, setting down his suitcase. "I'm sorry it's so late. The flight was delayed. How are you?" The question came out flat, robotic, like he was asking a colleague how a meeting had gone. Liana stared at him, eyes glistening. "How do you think I am, Adrian?" Her voice cracked. "I'm scared. My blood pressure's climbing. Our baby is at risk." Adrian's expression faltered, guilt flickering across his face. "Why didn't you go to the hospital?" he asked gently. "You know we can afford the best private care, whatever you need." She shook her head, anger swelling beneath the exhaustion. "That's not what I need," she snapped. "I need you, my husband, my partner, someone who answers the phone when I'm scared I might lose our baby. The nurses have been wonderful. My mom has been by every day, but they're not you." Her voice cracked again, and her fingers curled instinctively around the edge of the robe, as if holding herself together was the only thing keeping her upright. He moved closer, arms reaching out, but she stepped back, her eyes swimming with hurt. The rejection hit him hard. He could finally see the weight she'd been carrying alone, the distance he'd created. Still, somewhere deep inside, he bristled. He had been working non-stop for her, for the child, for the life they were building. "Liana," he said evenly, fighting to stay composed. "I know you're scared, but you have to understand I'm juggling enormous deals. These aren't distractions. They're about building generational wealth for our family, for our child." She looked at him in disbelief, like she no longer recognized the man standing in front of her. "I'd trade all the wealth in the world for a healthy baby and a present husband." Her words hung in the air, taut and heavy. A tense silence settled between them. Adrian glanced around the grand living room. Vaulted ceilings, curated artwork, the delicate scent of fresh lilies drifting from the arrangement on the coffee table. He stood in the middle of everything money could buy. Yet he felt utterly powerless. "All right," he said softly, stepping toward her, placing a tentative hand on her shoulder. "I'm here now. Let me fix this. I'll cancel a few meetings. We'll go to Dr. Chan together. And if things are serious, I swear I'll put it all on hold." Liana's eyes locked with his, searching for honesty in his face. After a long pause, she nodded. "I just need you to mean it this time. No more ignoring me." "I promise," he replied, gently pulling her into his arms, careful not to press too closely to her belly. She rested her head against his chest, her tears soaking quietly into his shirt. For that fleeting moment they were together, bound by love and a fragile vow of something better. Then his phone buzzed. Both of them froze. Adrian silenced it immediately, but the room filled once more with unspoken tension. Liana closed her eyes, willing this moment to be the turning point, hoping he would finally choose her and the baby over the endless clamor of boardrooms and business. In the days that followed, Adrian did try. He adjusted his schedule, moved meetings to early mornings or late nights so he could accompany Liana to her doctor visits. He drove her to Marlow Medical himself. Dr. Chan was cautiously optimistic, but continued to emphasize the risks of preeclampsia. She insisted on strict monitoring, minimal stress, and vigilance at home. Adrian helped Liana to the couch, brought her glasses of water, and sat beside her as they talked about baby names. The intimacy felt delicate, like a soap bubble suspended in air, too fragile to touch. They were trying, but the outside world didn't stop. Deals still demanded signatures. Investors still expected FaceTime, even as he carved out space for her. Urgent messages still found their way in. Some nights, Adrian was up until the early hours on international calls. Liana would wake, watching the soft glow of his phone light up his strained face. He'd sense her gaze, slip quietly back into bed, kiss her forehead. His way of saying, "I'm here," even if part of him wasn't. Their foundation wobbled on uncertain ground. Love was present, yes, but so was exhaustion. Reality chipped away at their efforts, and in the background, something unseen waited. A complication that no contract or checkbook could fend off, like a silent storm gathering strength. The day everything changed began with sunlight flooding their Boston estate in warm gold. The sky glowed in vibrant shades of pink and orange, a peaceful canvas that offered no hint of what lay ahead. Liana woke with a dull, pressing headache. She instinctively reached for her phone, checking for a message from Adrian. He had left early that morning for what he described as an absolutely unmissable meeting. No note, no text, no missed call, just a hollow space in their shared bed. Liana closed her eyes, breathing in slowly, telling herself to stay calm. Stress would only make things worse. She repeated silently that he must have had no choice, that this meeting was crucial enough to justify slipping out before dawn. Her nurse was scheduled to arrive within a couple of hours to check her vitals. In the meantime, she sat on the couch with a mug of herbal tea and a newborn care book, trying to calm the restless flutter in her stomach. Meanwhile, Adrian was across the city at the Millennial Hall, an exclusive venue in downtown Boston reserved for high-level gatherings. Today, he was hosting executives from Bort International, a powerful European conglomerate led by CEO Christophe Moreau. If Adrian could lock in this partnership, it would elevate Hale International to a dominant position in the European luxury market. Media speculation had already begun swirling about a possible multi-billion-dollar alliance. The boardroom was a masterpiece of design. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the skyline. A sleek mahogany table stretched across the room beneath recessed lighting. Stylized water carafes, crystal glasses, and a selection of gourmet pastries adorned the center. Adrian and his team were polished to perfection. Tailored suits, calm confidence. He looked the part. Navy suit, burgundy tie, every hair in place. His posture was perfect, unshaken. But behind the composed mask, a pang of guilt simmered. He had left Liana again, despite promising he wouldn't, despite knowing how fragile things had become. Still, the scale of this deal drowned out the whisper of doubt. This wasn't just another opportunity. It was the opportunity. The meeting began with pleasantries and a meticulously prepared presentation showcasing the synergies between Hale and Bort. Projections in the billions, global expansion, market dominance. By mid-morning, the conversation had shifted into detailed negotiations. Questions flew, terms adjusted, timelines discussed. Adrian's phone vibrated several times, but he ignored it. He'd instructed Julian to screen his calls. If Liana reached out, Julian would notify him privately, but so far, no message. Deep into the meeting, the air in the room was electric. They were closing in on a preliminary agreement, ambition hanging heavy in the space like fine cologne. Just past noon, the group broke for a recess. Adrian stepped into the corridor, finally glancing at his phone. There were missed calls from an unfamiliar local number and a text from Julian that read, "We have an urgent situation regarding Mrs. Hale." His pulse quickened without hesitation. He called Julian. "Adrian?" Julian answered instantly, voice taut. "What's going on?" Adrian demanded. "Liana's nurse tried calling you. She couldn't get through. Liana collapsed at home. They've taken her to Marlowe Medical." The words struck Adrian like a hammer to the chest. His breath caught. "What do you mean collapsed?" he asked, his voice tight with fear. "It's serious," Julian said, her blood pressure spiked. "They're running emergency tests now." "Dr. Chan is with her. You need to get there." Adrian ended the call without replying. A chill settled in his bones as his fingers went numb. In the boardroom, executives waited for his return, but in that instant, none of it mattered. Only Liana. He stepped back into the conference room, face pale, voice unsteady. "I'm sorry. I have to excuse myself," he said, addressing Christophe Moreau and the Bort team. "There's a family emergency. My team will continue in my absence." Without waiting for a reply, he grabbed his briefcase and left, ignoring the wave of concern and confusion behind him. Outside, his driver, Marcus, stood by the black SUV. "To Marlowe Medical," Adrian barked, his voice shaking. The drive felt eternal. Every red light, every sluggish car in front of them felt like a personal assault. His foot tapped involuntarily, his hands balled into fists. He thought about every call from Liana he hadn't answered, every message he dismissed as poor timing. The guilt was deafening. He tried calling Dr. Chan straight to voicemail. His throat tightened, panic clawing at him. When they finally arrived at the hospital, Adrian pushed through the glass doors and made a beeline for the maternity unit. A nurse, tense and wide-eyed, pointed him toward a waiting area. Eleanor sat there, hunched forward, her eyes puffy and red. "What happened?" he asked, voice cracking. Eleanor looked up, her gaze a mix of anguish and fury. "Where were you, Adrian?" She's been calling and calling. Her nurse found her unconscious. Her voice wavered. "They said it's a severe case of preeclampsia, possibly HELLP syndrome." The acronym hit him like a punch. His knees buckled slightly and he had to fight to stay upright. "Where is she now?" "They're taking her into emergency surgery. A C-section," Eleanor whispered. "She's still early in her 3rd trimester, but they can't wait. The baby's heart rate was dropping." Adrian stood frozen, powerless. Everything slowed. The lights above felt harsh. The sterile white walls closed in around him like a cage. His mind scrambled for something, anything to say, but his throat clenched too tightly to speak. Then Dr. Eliza Chan emerged from the double doors, her expression steeled by experience, yet shadowed by real concern. Her scrubs were wrinkled, her tone calm, but urgent. "Liana's condition is critical," she said, raising a hand as he tried to speak. "We're performing an emergency C-section. It's the only way to save both mother and child. Her blood pressure is dangerously high. Her liver enzymes are elevated. Platelets are dropping. This is classic HELP syndrome. We need to act fast." Adrian swallowed hard. "But she'll survive, right? And the baby?" "We're doing everything we can," Dr. Chan replied, her expression tight with focus. "Pray." With that, the doctor turned and disappeared through the surgical doors. Adrian collapsed into a nearby chair. Eleanor sank down beside him, tears streaking silently down her face. He hesitated, then reached for her hand, unsure if he even had the right to seek comfort from the woman whose daughter he had neglected so profoundly. They sat in silence. Minutes crawled by, each one heavier than the last. Every second stretched into eternity. Adrian's thoughts churned. Memories of ignored calls, dismissed concerns, promises made without conviction. Every time he'd prioritized a deal over the life forming inside Liana's womb now felt like a sharp blade carving into his conscience. He began to pray, not in any practiced way, but in desperate pleas. "Please give me another chance. Let them live. I'll change, I swear." In the operating room, surgical lights glared over Liana's unconscious body. The medical team moved in swift, synchronized rhythm. Dr. Chan led with commanding precision, calling out instructions to nurses and the anesthesiologist. The baby was in distress. Liana's vitals were unstable, her heart rate spiking and crashing erratically. Outside, more family members began to arrive. Liana's younger sister, Melinda, rushed in alongside several close friends. Faces were pale, eyes rimmed with red. Soft murmurs of concern passed between them, but nothing dulled the edge of fear. For Adrian, despite the crowd, The loneliness was suffocating. He had never felt more isolated in his life. At last, another doctor emerged through the swinging doors. He pulled down his surgical mask slowly. "Mr. Hale." Adrian stood on shaky legs, Eleanor right behind him. "Yes," he breathed. The doctor gave a weary but steady nod. "We were able to deliver the baby, a boy. He's premature but stable for now. He's been moved to the neonatal intensive care unit." Adrian's heart surged for a second, but then the doctor continued. "Liana's condition remains very serious. Her blood pressure is still critically high. She's lost a significant amount of blood. We're doing everything we can to manage possible organ damage." Relief for his son was instantly eclipsed by dread for Liana. "Can I see her?" "She's in recovery, still unconscious, and still in danger. But yes, you can go in briefly." Gripping Eleanor's hand, Adrian moved slowly down the corridor toward the recovery ward, his heartbeat loud in his ears. Inside the room, the sounds of beeping monitors filled the air. Liana lay pale and unmoving in the bed, surrounded by tubes and wires. Her face looked almost unfamiliar, drained of color, drawn thin by the ordeal. An IV fed medication into her arm, while machines tracked every heartbeat, every breath. While monitors displayed a steady stream of fluctuating data, Adrian moved cautiously towards the hospital bed, terrified of doing anything that might worsen her condition. He gently brushed a strand of hair from Liana's forehead, startled by how cold her skin felt. "Liana," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm here. I'm so sorry." Her eyelids fluttered slightly as if trying to respond, but she remained unconscious. A nurse entered quietly, checking the IV drip and adjusting the monitor settings. Adrian lingered by the bedside, helpless and desperate. "Will she wake up soon?" he asked, his voice tight with fear. The nurse answered with quiet reassurance. "We hope so. Her body's been through a tremendous shock. Right now, she just needs time to stabilize. The next stretch of time is critical." Her tone was calm, but Adrian caught the slight hesitation in her voice, the practiced balance between hope and caution that only came from years of witnessing uncertain recoveries. He nodded and stepped aside, giving the nurse space to work. Then his eyes returned to his wife, still pale, silent. In his mind, flashes of their life together began to rise. He saw her again on their wedding day, radiant under the golden sunset of the Nantucket beach, where they'd exchanged vows. He remembered spotting her for the first time at that charity fundraiser for the children's hospital. How her gentleness with a sick child had pierced through the noise of the crowd and stolen his attention entirely. In those memories, he saw a man who had once sworn to protect her, love her, put her first. Where had that man gone? Guilt surged inside him like a crashing wave. He sank into a chair beside the bed and buried his face in his hands. This was his fault, all of it. The silence in the room was deafening, interrupted only by the soft beep of machines, each one a cruel reminder of how close he had come to losing everything. He should have noticed the signs, should have been present, should have put everything on hold to be by her side. But instead, he had been consumed by meetings, mergers, accolades, and ambitions. While the real crisis unfolded quietly at home, Eleanor placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "I believe she'll make it," she said, her voice trembling with restrained emotion. "She's strong and she loves you." Her words were meant to comfort, but they only deepened the ache in his chest. He didn't feel worthy of that love. Not anymore. Adrian nodded, tears slipping freely down his face. No words could convey the depth of remorse weighing down his heart. He remained by her side, whispering prayers into the quiet, please for her to return for just one more chance. While Liana battled for her life, their newborn son faced his own fight inside the neonatal intensive care unit. Eventually, Adrian mustered the strength to leave Liana's side and visit the NICU, accompanied by Eleanor and a kind nurse named Rachel Evans. Rachel had worked in neonatal care for years, known across the hospital for her gentle touch and unwavering compassion. She had seen tiny, vulnerable babies fight the odds and win. She hoped sincerely that the Hale baby would be one of them. Inside the softly lit NICU, rows of incubators lined the walls, each one sheltering a fragile life. The hush of the NICU was broken only by the quiet hum of machines and the soft rhythmic beeping of monitors. Adrian stood silently beside the incubator labeled Baby Boy Hale, staring down with tear-filled eyes at the fragile figure inside. His newborn son, fighting to breathe through tiny tubes and a web of wires. "He's just about 3 lbs, Rachel Evans explained gently. "He's on oxygen support, but he's responsive. We're monitoring him closely for any signs of infection or complications." Eleanor brought a trembling hand to her chest, tears slipping freely. "He's so small." Adrian couldn't respond, his throat clenched under the weight of emotion, fear, awe, and a sudden, overwhelming rush of love he hadn't been prepared for. At last, he found his voice. "He's perfect," he whispered. In that moment, seeing his son so defenseless, the full reality of fatherhood hit him with devastating force. All the money, the accolades, the empire he had built, none of it mattered here. None of it could guarantee safety, health, or a happy ending. He realized then how utterly powerless he felt. No amount of strategic vision, no clever negotiation could shield this tiny life from harm. The vulnerability shook him to his core. He gently placed his palm against the incubator's glass. "Hey, little guy," he murmured. "I'm your dad, and I promise as soon as you and your mom are better, I'm going to be there for you always." Eleanor wrapped an arm around his shoulder. "He'll make it," she said, her voice thick with hope and fear. "And so will Liana." But as the hours passed, relief remained out of reach. Despite rounds of medication, blood transfusions, and constant monitoring, Liana's condition remained critical. She was moved to the ICU, where Dr. Chan and a rotating team of specialists worked tirelessly. Treatments were adjusted, test results were examined, but nothing normalized. Later, Chan approached Adrian, her face grave. "Her kidneys are under considerable strain," she said quietly. "And we're seeing early signs of liver involvement. We've done everything we can medically. Now we wait. Her body has to fight." Wait. The word echoed in Adrian's mind like a curse. Time felt distorted, each minute stretching painfully. He couldn't sleep, barely ate. He walked the sterile hospital halls, his thoughts a blur of dread. Eleanor begged him to go home, even briefly, but he refused. Sleep felt like betrayal, rest, like abandonment. As long as Liana was fighting, he couldn't allow himself even a moment of comfort. He wouldn't leave Liana now. Not when she needed him. Not after everything. One afternoon, he stepped outside for air. The hospital courtyard was quiet. A soft drizzle fell from the colorless sky, matching his mood exactly. He tilted his head back, letting the rain trace paths across his skin and cling to his lashes. A memory rose. Santa Monica, the charity fundraiser. The first time he saw Liana kneeling beside that little boy in a wheelchair, her eyes full of kindness and warmth. Back then, she was a stranger, yet she had radiated compassion. She had become the compass by which he measured everything good. She reminded him of what truly mattered in a world driven by ego and greed. But somewhere along the way, he had veered off course. He pulled out his phone, the device that had once symbolized endless demands, and stared at his lock screen. A photo of him and Liana, taken on a yacht during happier times, both smiling into the sunlight, frozen in a moment before things became so complicated. His thumb hovered over the contact list. For a moment, he considered it, canceling every deal, stepping down as CEO, even selling Hale International if that was what it took to earn a second chance with Liana. No contract, no business conquest was worth continuing in a world where she didn't exist. With hands trembling, Adrian called Julian. It rang once, then twice. Finally, it connected. "Adrian, how is everything?" Julian asked, clearly on edge. "Postpone everything," Adrian said firmly. "Every meeting, every call. I don't know when I'll be available, and if they push back, tell them it's a life-or-death family emergency." He hesitated. His voice cracked. "And if that means losing the deal, so be it." There was a pause. Then Julian's voice, steady but gentle. "I understand. It's done." Adrian ended the call, slipping the phone back into his pocket. Rain began to fall harder now, but he didn't care. He stayed in the courtyard, eyes to the sky, letting the droplets run down his face, trying somehow to wash away the guilt that clung to every inch of him. The cold wetness soaked through his shirt and into his bones, but was nothing compared to the storm inside him. Every raindrop felt like penance, each one whispering, "Too late, too late." He welcomed the punishment. He murmured a quiet prayer. "Please, just let her be okay. I'll give up everything if she can come back to me." Liana's condition remained fragile over the next couple of days. Adrian lived in a state of suspended terror, drifting between the ICU and the NICU, refusing to go home or rest for more than a few moments. He curled up in rigid chairs, woken by the smallest sounds, a soft monitor alarm, footsteps in the hallway. Every time he blinked, he saw her face pale, still surrounded by machines. Even in sleep, images haunted him. Liana calling his name, her voice echoing in corridors of regret. He jolted awake more than once, sweat mixing with tears. He spent time with the baby, too, watching that fragile, flickering heartbeat on the monitor, praying silently as the boy drew breath after breath under the hum of the NICU incubator. Doctors were cautiously optimistic. The baby was responding well, gaining a sliver of strength each day, but they warned Adrian to brace for any outcome. Premature infants were unpredictable. When he was alone, the weight of remorse became unbearable. Adrian relived every moment he failed Liana, every call ignored, every plea brushed aside. He remembered the lunch she brought to his office, how he barely looked at her before brushing her off. The guilt carved into his conscience like a dull, constant blade. There were moments he pressed his palms to his eyes, wishing he could rewind time just once. Go back. Choose differently. Be the man he promised he would be. Late one night, the corridor outside the ICU was silent, the air heavy with stillness. Then, footsteps slow approaching Dr. Eliza Chan. She looked drained, her shoulders slumped from exhaustion, but in her eyes a flicker, a glimmer of something Adrian hadn't seen in days. "Hope, Adrian," Dr. Chan said softly. "Liana's blood pressure is finally coming down. Her kidney function is still fragile, but we're seeing steady improvement." She glanced at the chart in her hand. "Her labs are looking better now." Adrian let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. A shaky, disbelieving exhale. His knees nearly buckled under the weight of relief, and for a brief second, the sterile hospital corridor seemed to blur before his eyes. "So, is she out of danger?" "She's still in a critical state," Dr. Chan replied gently. "But we're moving in the right direction. You can see her, but keep the visit short. She's in and out of consciousness." His heart pounding, Adrian followed Dr. Chan back into the ICU. Under the soft blue glow of the monitors, he saw her. Liana, eyes fluttering open, he rushed to her bedside carefully. Her gaze was blurry at first, but recognition flickered across her face. "Liana," he whispered, tears already threatening. "I'm here." She tried to speak, but all that came was a rough whisper. He pressed the call button, and a nurse arrived quickly with a small cup of water. Adrian gently lifted a straw to her lips, wetting them. "The baby," she rasped, her voice faint but frantic. "He's in the NICU," Adrian said softly, brushing hair from her forehead. "He's doing well. They say he's strong, just small." Relief ghosted across her face, but tears filled her eyes. Her fingers gripped the blanket weakly, as if anchoring herself to the moment, grounding the fragile hope inside her. "I was so scared," she whispered, her voice cracking. I thought I'd never meet him." "You will," he said, his voice breaking. "You will, I promise." She looked at him, weak but direct. Her words were barely audible. "You left me," she murmured, her lips trembling. "I needed you." He bowed his head, shame washing over him. Her voice, though soft, cut deeper than any accusation. "I know," he choked out, "and I hate myself for it. I'm so sorry." Their eyes met, an exchange of sorrow and love and years' worth of emotion unspoken. Liana's hand reached for his, weak but sure. He clutched it, bringing it to his lips, letting silent tears fall. A soft beeping of machines filled the room. The nurse stepped forward gently. "She needs rest now." With great reluctance, Adrian released her hand and stepped away. But for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, hope glimmered where despair had ruled. Liana was healing. Over the next days, her strength returned in small, steady increments. Her blood pressure stabilized. Her organs began recovering. She was moved out of the ICU and into a quiet recovery room where sleep came easier, uninterrupted by alarms. Each hour that passed without a setback felt like a gift, a chance at rewriting the story they almost didn't get to finish. She asked constantly about the baby. Finally, the doctors approved a short, supervised visit to the NICU. Adrian stood behind her wheelchair, hands lightly on her shoulders, eyes misting as he watched Liana reach into the incubator with trembling fingers, her hand resting gently on their newborn son's tiny fist. Their family, broken and bent, was beginning to mend. For a fleeting moment, the outside world disappeared. There were no boardrooms, no headlines, no curated online personas. There was only a mother's love, a father's gratitude, and a newborn whose fragile existence had triumphed against the odds. Liana's recovery was slow. Her body remained weak, her movements cautious. But her spirit grew stronger with each passing day. Due to the severity of her complications, she remained hospitalized longer than most postpartum patients, while their son continued to receive round-the-clock care in the NICU. But they were alive, bound together by a harrowing experience that made every breath feel like a second chance. During this period, Adrian never left the hospital. He was always there, fetching water, adjusting window shades, helping Liana with pillows, lifting her gently when she needed support. The corporate titan, once glued to his phone, now kept the device silenced, except for the rare message from Julian about matters deemed absolutely urgent. Even then, he had handed much of Hale International's leadership to his executive team, instructing them to keep the ship afloat in his absence. In some circles, his absence might have seemed like weakness, but to Adrian, it was the greatest strength he had ever shown, being present for his wife and son, being the man they needed, though nurses and doctors often recognized him, and yes, a few even dared to ask for photos. Adrian declined all publicity. He sidestepped the reporters waiting outside. He didn't care about appearances anymore. All that mattered was Liana and their baby. As the days passed, the conversations that once seemed impossible began to take place in hushed tones beneath the soft hiss of oxygen machines and rhythmic beeps of monitors. Liana, voice growing steadier, spoke of her fear and isolation. She told Adrian how deeply abandoned she had felt, how helpless and invisible. He listened, really listened, and he cried. He apologized, not with grand speeches, but with the humility of a man who had finally faced his failings. She forgave him, not in one moment, but slowly, carefully, piece by piece. The love was still there, but trust would take time. One morning, her hand found his. The grip was faint, but unmistakably firm. "Promise me," she said, eyes fixed on his. "No deal, no business, no matter how massive, will ever come before us again." He brought his forehead to hers, his voice a vow. "I promise, you and our son are everything." In the hallway, staff began to refer to him affectionately as the Shadow because he never left her side. Nurses like Rachel Evans often remarked on how rarely they saw a partner so present, so devoted. Their words pierced Adrian's heart because they were a reminder of who he hadn't always been. As their son grew stronger, the tubes began to come off. One unforgettable afternoon, the medical team showed Liana how to do kangaroo care, skin-to-skin bonding with her baby. She trembled slightly as she held him to her chest, and when his tiny fingers wrapped around hers in a soft, instinctive grip, she broke into quiet sobs. Adrian stood nearby, watching in awe, tears glistening as their son reached out and opened his hand, seeking warmth, seeking safety, seeking the love that had been waiting all along. They named him Caleb, meaning faithful or devotion, a name that felt perfect after everything they'd endured. Weeks passed. Liana's recovery continued steadily. Caleb remained in the NICU, gaining strength under the watchful eyes of the neonatal team. Adrian refused to leave. He only returned briefly to their Boston home for fresh clothes, returning within hours. Each day brought small triumphs, Caleb gaining weight, regulating his breathing. Watching his son fight for every milestone, Adrian realized just how insignificant his business triumphs had become in comparison. Meanwhile, Hale International was under pressure. Shareholder tensions rose, and the once promising Bort International deal stagnated. When Julian updated him about missed deadlines and board unrest, Adrian met the concerns with unwavering calm. "If the deal dies, it dies," he said. "My family comes first." Julian was surprised but respected his stance. Quietly, he handled the corporate fallout, privately admiring the transformation in his once relentlessly driven CEO. Though still recovering, Liana found joy in visiting Caleb's incubator, reading him lullabies, whispering gentle reassurances, and stroking his tiny hands. Late at night, she and Adrian talked, apologies flowing, promises made for a different future. One gentle conversation at a time, they began mending the broken parts of their bond. Outside the hospital walls, the business world waited. But Adrian no longer felt pulled by it. His devotion was with Liana and Caleb. And in that miracle, he discovered life's truest riches. Weeks later, under the NICU team's dedicated care, Caleb was finally strong enough to go home. Liana, though still regaining her strength, wept as she carried him through the doors of their home, where a welcome home banner swayed gently. The nursery, once still and silent, now buzzed with warmth, soft toys, glowing nightlights, and the soothing hum of lullabies. Adrian, transformed, protective, humbled, marveled at how Caleb's tiny fingers clung to his. Each day brought new challenges, feedings, diaper changes, doctor visits, and yet each one felt like a blessing. He delegated Hale International's day-to-day to trusted executives. No global venture mattered more than his wife and son. One evening, As the Boston skyline shimmered through their penthouse windows, Liana held Caleb close and asked, "Do you regret stepping back?" Adrian shook his head, voice filled with quiet gratitude. "Only that I didn't do it sooner." They exchanged a look, a vow without words. Never again would ambition come before family. In the following months, Adrian restructured parts of the company, proving to investors that leadership didn't mean sacrificing what mattered most. A landmark deal with Bellard and Compsewar affirmed that ethical success was still success. At home, Liana healed and with grace and strength returned to her passion, advocating for maternal health. During her first public speech, she spoke candidly about high-risk pregnancies and her ordeal. Adrian stood off stage, cradling Caleb, eyes misted with pride. They had nearly lost everything, but love and second chances prevailed. In the end, Adrian Hale learned a lesson no billion-dollar merger could ever teach. That life's true wealth is not counted in profits or partnerships, but in presence, in love, in family. From the brink of tragedy, he emerged changed. A man who stepped back from an empire to cherish what he nearly lost. A healthy baby, a healing wife, and a promise to never let go again.